And I think when you can't talk about something, you can't heal from it. It's difficult to make sense of something that happened to you when you're sitting there unsure of how to process what has gone on. So I really wanted to write this book as a way for others to also see that number one, you're not alone. This is not just happening to you. This is a universal problem, but one that's also very prominent for us as South Africans, especially women of color in South Africa post-apartheid. We are so saddled with a lot of the same issues, a lot of the same things that often, render us a little bit helpless. And so it was really important to me to write this book, to teach other people how to advocate for themselves, but also to share my own story. So I was born in Hanover Park, which some of you might know, be familiar with. It's a very rough area. It was an area that was created essentially when the group areas that happened to be able to take people from their homes and throw them in a ghetto. So when people were displaced, that's where they put a lot of us. Of course, there are other places in this city that the same happened to. But with all of those things comes social issues, as we can all understand, the issues of gangsterism, drug usage, large-scale violence, and that also is detrimental to our health, both physically, mentally, emotionally, etc. And so when you look at the systems around you, the same thing is happening. The systems don't work. They are either overburdened, they have to close at a certain time because of violence within the area or just a fear for the staff safety. So if you grow up in these areas, automatically your life is at risk in a sense because if anything were to happen to you past 17 and 9, a lot of people don't have cars in those areas. You are destined to either die or have serious complications with illness because you can't get to healthcare as easily as someone else might be able to get to adequate healthcare. And so that's what happened to me. I was in and out of the public healthcare system since I was about 14 years old. I started my period when I was 11, and things just slowly escalated and got out of control. So at 11, I really started to have really painful menstrual cycles. I didn't know what was wrong with me. No one could answer and tell me this is what's happening to your body, this is why you are experiencing what you are experiencing, no one could answer my questions. And I went to my appointments every I would say it was sometimes once a month, once every 3 months. I would go to these appointments and be met with either hostility or people making assumptions about who I am based on how I present or the class and gender that I unfortunately intersect in. And so I'm in the system, but I'm not getting the care that I need. I'm not getting the support that I need. And so this went on for a long time where they were just prescribing pain medications on a large scale, but no one was telling me what was wrong with me. No one knew what was wrong with me until I was about 19, and that's when I ended up in the hospital and they found out what was wrong with me. But in between all of that, there was lots of experiences of racism. I quite wide state, I would say. And it was pervasive because in every situation I found myself in, I was being told when I was genuinely seeking help and unwell and a teenager, I was being separated from my mother, which is really traumatic. You're unwell, you don't feel well, you are experiencing something completely foreign to you, and then you're separated from your parents, like you are an inmate, a felon, something of the sort. Why would you separate a teenager from their parent? But that's how these systems perceive people who look like me and people who are even less ambiguous than me. And so this is happening to Black women of every shape, size, color, and so forth. So I can only imagine how much worse it is when you are darker than I am, when your curls are tighter than mine, etc. And so within the space, I'm being told that you people get botched abortions, and you come in here and you seek help when you've done this to yourself. I was a teenager, I had no idea what that meant, why I was being accused of these things. I was put in situations where doctors who tell me they are teaching me a lesson to lie, and using, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but I can't think of the word, and I just, forceps. But anyway, if you had taps me, not a book, man, the apparatus and I'm open that. So they would use that on me, and they would, comes in different sizes. They would use the biggest one on me and tell me I'm teaching you a lesson. You people lie, you people carry disease, and you people need to do the lesson, essentially. And so, it took me years to kind of get to the point where I understood what was happening to me, and I understood the gravity of the situation that I found myself in. And only when writing this book, I found myself in a situation where I was, having to, because I was in therapy as well, but I was in therapy and I had to reckon with the fact that, what's happening to me, what happened to me rather, is a form of sexual assault. And I think the problem with why I didn't recognize it as such is because we are taught to revere authority figures. We are taught that doctors are benevolent, that they only want what's best for us and only doing what's best for us. That's not often the truth. People come with their biases, their prejudice, and whatever else they used to thinking, and they then reenact those sort of things on our bodies. And that's the difficult part of this, is that this is what happens to us. So it was a big reckoning for me. It was very difficult to come to understand that this has happened to me, and I wasn't aware of what happened to me. I think we also thought that sexual assault happens with strangers in a dark alleyway, somewhere far in movements where you scream and shout and you are bloodied and bruised and whatever else. But we don't ever think of what that looks like in different settings. And I think that that's really, really important. And so that's part of my diagnosis story. But when I had my first surgery, the same doctor who had been telling me that I was lying and he was going to find out what was wrong with me eventually, and that I might start telling the truth. He came to me, and I swear I thought this man was going to apologize to me for his behavior. But instead he laughed at me again and then he said to me, I never thought to look for endometriosis in you, because this is a disease that people of European descent get. And so I was not assuming that this is what was going on with you. I was laying there just completely just shocked and appalled, because this is clearly happening. So your thoughts don't really matter when I'm right in front of you. This has happened to me. I'm clearly not white, but something needs to be done. It is what it is. So yeah, it's been a shocking journey for me, having to deal with all of this, and also, seeing how people get treated in the public health system. I don't think that healthcare providers are equipped with the awareness and a little bit of being conscious about their own biases, about things that they say to patients, about checking their prejudice at the door before they come in and deal with the patient. And because they don't do that, they create additional trauma outside of the illness. So they're creating a whole other set of trauma for you, where your illness is already traumatic. And I do wish that this book gets picked up by healthcare providers in whatever shape or form they come in, whether they're doctors, nurses, therapists, whatever it is. If you're dealing with other people, that you pick up this book and you read and kind of teach yourself to go into a situation without applying your own thoughts. There's something interesting that I always think about is that when you hear something, right, or you are confronted with something, the first thought in your head is often not your own thought. It's the thought that you've been socialized with. It's the thought that your church has indoctrinated you into, your parents have indoctrinated you, society has made you think of certain things in a particular way. So like first thought sometimes is a lot of that. It's a lot of what you've been taught. So if you don't react on that first thought and you let it go and you think, well, what do I think about this? Chances are that you have a different understanding of what is being said to you than your first assumption, your first thoughts. And so I think it's really important to dig deeper, not react from that first thought that pops in our heads and go, okay, this is what I think is happening here. And I think once we can do that, we can shift some of what happens in the public health system. I remember the same time this was happening to me, I was literally in the hospital bed. They cut me open and done whatever. And the doctor comes and she says to me, I'm sorry, you have stage 4 endometriosis, you're not going to be able to have children. And I was 19, so I'm so stunned by what I'm hearing. So 19, I didn't really consider whether I want children or not, how I feel about things. You're still discovering the world. And here someone comes and they drop this bomb on you. They take away your ability to choose, your ability to make sense of. And I just kept thinking, why couldn't they find someone, a counselor, whatever, a therapist, someone, a social worker, to come in and have that conversation with me in a different way, and perhaps it would have landed very differently with me, that I wouldn't have felt the sense of confusion and surprise and shock and whatever else. Perhaps I would have felt differently. Perhaps it would have been a situation where someone had explained this to me and I could have asked questions, I could have tried to, make sense of what was happening, but I wasn't afforded that opportunity. And I think it's a shame because this is in the public health system, but I've also had experiences in the private health system where psychiatrists came to my bedside, therapists came to my bedside. So what does it mean for I believe the percentage is like 77% of South Africans who don't have medical aid? What happens to you? How do you get treated? How does that inform the people that we are, the people who walk down the street, the people we interact on a day-to-day basis? Because we're shaped by something, right? So I think that if we had this system kind of work in a different way, we'd probably have different outcomes. We'd probably have statistics that aren't as jarring, as bad as they are right now. And so the other thing that I really wanted to share is that 1 in every 10 women have endometriosis. And I was recently doing a radio interview with a doctor who said that number is false because it often takes longer to diagnose. In Black women, it's 50% less likely that you will be diagnosed with endometriosis, meaning that by the time you present at a hospital with endometriosis, it will be as severe as mine. It will be at stage 4 instead of catching it at stage 1 because they don't believe that people who are not white can have this illness. There's this prejudice about who gets what illness. And we are considered to be vectors of disease when we are people of color. And that's what's causing our afflictions. And if you're not a person of color, then we can examine other things. We can consider the possibilities of endometriosis, right? And so that number likely looks more like 1 in 4 women have endometriosis. And that's, from 10 to 4 is a massive jump. It's more than half. And when you add in, like I said, things like race, class, gender, you have an even bigger problem, right? So you find yourself in South Africa, for example, in the African continent, sorry, and people are not getting treated for their endometriosis. Women in Nigeria are experiencing prolapses and such because of endometriosis going on for too long. And also, remember, our cultures often stigmatize menstrual cycles. We are not clean, we are not, you don't go outside, whatever it is in your culture, in your home, in your society. I'm sure there are different beliefs, but in general, menstruation is stigmatized. You don't walk around with a pad in your hand, people mustn't see it. You don't discard of it when people can see it. It's this massive thing you're taught, wash yourself over and over again, because you want dirty, right? So when you have an illness, then is also part of a stigmatized condition as women. Where does that leave the rest of us? Does it enable you and encourage you to be confident to go and seek help? I don't think so. Because you have this thing that relates to a menstrual cycle, which is just quote unquote gross, right? But endometriosis is a dangerous illness. Doctors will say, oh, it won't kill you. It has the capability to kill you. That tissue can be found anywhere in your body, even in your brain, where it shouldn't be. So we can't sit here and say this is just a benign illness. It causes disability. It causes a bunch of ailments and so forth. And the other thing also that's very important to know is that 80% of people who preface this, endometriosis causes chronic pain, right? 80%, 85%, sorry, of people with chronic pain are more likely to have severe infection. And that's really, really important because now we have to consider the fact that this is a whole body disease. This is a mind-body disease. We are not just dealing with something that's localized. And so it needs a treatment system of various people, right? We can't just have a gynecologist involved, or we have to have a team of people who are treating this and not stigmatizing this illness, right? It's really, really important. As we know, depression is a horrible disease. People lose their lives. People live lives that are very difficult. And so yeah, and I think that the depression also comes in from your quality of life being different, right? You can't do the things that you used to do. You can't perhaps live the life that you wanted to live, that you have, thought of living. You can't run a marathon. And of course, it's not just generalization. I'm sure there are people with endometriosis who do this. But the quality of life will be impacted in one way or another, whether that is infertility, when they really want a child, or whether it is, wanting to be able to hike a mountain. There is going to be some level of issue popping up, of quality of life being less than what it should be. And that obviously adds to the level of depression that we see. So, yeah, I really wanted to share with you guys as well that I nearly lost my life because of endometriosis in 2021. I had a surgery for my endometriosis that I knew was going to be long and severe because of the stage and the endometriosis that I have. I didn't know just how bad it was going to be. So I found myself in a situation where I was in surgery for 12 hours straight. And it was supposed to be 5 hours, 12 hours. And I was in ICU. Just didn't know what happened to me, just confused. And I had to have 2 surgeries after that to deal with the impact of what had happened. So what essentially happened is that the endometriosis had spread my kidneys, and it was narrowing my kidney pipe. And so they had to go in and cut it in lymph into my bladder. Somehow that part had, started to die, part a little bit that they cut off. Where that cut over that started to die, and it was leaking urine into my abdomen. So I got sepsis, and maybe other sepsis. And so I'm in hospital, in ICU, dealing with the fact that now I have sepsis. What am I going to do? And I can tell you that people are so unkind, so they're not able to understand the implications of what is happening to you. And so you're not necessarily taken seriously. I remember, being in that situation, not understanding what's going on, people not, being able to really explain to you what is happening to you. And then I had another surgery because my bowels had attached to each other. So it was one thing after the next. And the other part of this is that it really affects your work life. I had to leave my job, the job that I loved very much, because they needed, as they said, a body in the role. And believe it or not, this is a mental health organization. It's just, I know it's astounding that this is the thinking, this is the way that things are handled. But I don't think that we prioritize mental health in this country. I don't think that we take it as seriously as we possibly could. And it's, it results in really, really horrific things for all of us. So yeah, I will, let me check that in below. Excerpt of the book. Yeah, this was the part of the video. Surgery days, 17th April soon came around. In the race to get to hospital on time, I had completely forgotten that I had set up candles in my statue of Mother Mary in purple and a rosary. I quickly ran over in the dim light, kneeled in front of the candle and in purple and started to clap my cupped hands together. Because I go forward, I'm cool, I said, inviting my ancestors who couldn't be interested in my life and see on my behavior. To pray and ensure I would be well, I started to pray our Father and Our Lady, asking for the surgery to go smoothly. I wanted to be able to recover and continue to do meaningful work I petitioned. As I opened my eyes, I noticed my feet, able to be pendulum, glistening in the light of the candle. Why not? I thought to myself. I was slightly afraid and didn't know what the pendulum would foreshadow, but I picked it up anyway in a hurry. And I decided to ask a few questions while spinning it back. Will everything go well with my surgery? I watched the pendulum swing and waited for it to settle. The response was loud, swung left and right like someone shaking the head no. I brushed it off and tried again in a different way. Will the surgery be easy? Again, I watched it swing and settle on a left to right swing, saying no. Whatever I thought to myself, it's just a bunch of nonsense. I got to myself. I said another prayer for protection and healing before putting out the candles and the paper. I grabbed my rosary. I didn't want to forget it on our way out. So that was the beginning of the 2021 surgery. So I really want to, anyone listening and watching, my most important thing that I would like people to take away from this is number one, to be compassionate to other people. And, advocating for yourself is really important. When you advocate for yourself, you ask questions, you tell people, can I record this when you're not happy with what they're saying to you? You go and seek another opinion. Go and do a complaint to the health department. You can do it anonymously. But it's important to not just be a sitting duck, and it's important to empower ourselves. And it's difficult when things come into play, like intersecting identities, like not being able to speak English fluently, which is majority of my family. How do these people report things when they're not able to send an email in English? And that's where we come in as people who can advocate for other people, right? And so it's really important, even when you are going through something, like saying if you see something, say something, do something. It's really important. You don't have to, start swinging on anyone, but take the time to stand up for other people. When you see something being said to someone else, say to the person if they're saying something to tell them that this is an issue and this is not okay. And write the report if you have to, report people if you have to, call them up if you have to. I spent my time in hospital doing this, even though I was giving. I spent my time in hospital counseling other people who, in fact, the entire ward were given an HIV/AIDS result. And I'm sitting there ready to counsel someone while holding myself together because I've been cut open and I'm going to someone's grave to talk them through this. So it's really important, I think, for all of us to at least do a little bit of counseling course, because you'll find yourself in situations where you have to step in. And other part of this that I think is really, really important. I think as a society we do this really well in pockets, but we have to do it broader, is the importance of community, right? When these things are happening, you need a support system. And it's really important to be the support system for other people. Even if it is that you feel powerless yourself to go over to someone and say to them, I see you, I'm hearing you, I'm sorry this is happening to you. To give someone a hug if they need it. It's so, so important. We are not islands, and this is not the way we are culturally as South Africans. And just, I think, how in the African continent, how we are and how we relate to each other is not individualist. And I think we understand how that can be a dangerous slippery slope when we see ourselves as islands and we don't, intermingle and kind of pass through and engage our people. So it's very important, I think, to remember how important community is. Community can pull you through some of the worst things on earth. Community can stand by you and help you make sense of what has happened to you. Community can step in and handle the reporting of things that happen to you as well. And I think that we must all be there for each other. So for all of you sitting here and people on the call as well, I think that that's the thing I want you to take away from today's conversation, is how important it is to, when I see something, I'm going to intervene. So I don't know if we have questions.
I think now would be a great time to perhaps engage with the audience, and we'll start with the people in person. Yes, you can. Thank you so much for that, Nadine. And yeah, I'll open it up to the audience in person first. Rizwana, at the back.
Hi, Nadine. Hello, thank you for that wonderful talk. You've been in the healthcare system for many years now, and our knowledge about endometriosis in public is increased. People are learning a bit more about it. Have you been in healthcare over the years, or would you say that got it worse or stayed the same over the years?
In some ways, I can't really tell, and the reason I'm saying this is because I am no longer in the private health system. In private health, things are really different. Of course, I'm not saying that there aren't issues within our private healthcare. There are issues, but you are more empowered to ask for a second opinion, tell someone, no, I don't want to do this, or whatever the case may be. You're also seeing the same doctor when you go for your appointments and so forth, which you don't have the luxury of in the public healthcare system. So it's a difficult thing to say whether or not things are changing or they're not changing, particularly in the public health system. I mean, some of the stuff that I do here and the research that I do find that there are still a lot of incidences, there are still a lot of things that are happening that shouldn't be happening. There are nurses who will report back that someone is coming for contraception, which could be because they have an illness like, PCOS, endometriosis, etc. Or they could just be using it as a contraceptive, but that's no one's business. So there are still these things that are happening. So I can't definitively say, and there's still massive stigma against people. There's still within the public health system, I hear it often, that people are kind of uncertain about who gets it and why they get it. So there's still this perception that white people get endometriosis, and that's something that is looked for in white patients, but not in patients of color. So I think that there's a lot of work that we need to do. There's a lot of conversations that need to be needs to happen. I also think that healthcare providers need to come out of the space and come and engage in spaces like this. But I think the fact that doctors kind of have this perception that they know everything really, or that information that only come in a way of a medical journal or something of the sort of a problem. Because I think that it leaves out evidence, it leaves out the people who are literally screaming and shouting this is happening to me. So I think it's quite difficult to say. And then the other thing is that treatment hasn't changed in all of the years. Yeah, it's been almost 2 decades. And nothing has changed really in how endometriosis is treated, which I often wonder if it's because of the gender bias. Would there be more research and money pumped into this if it was something affecting men? Probably. But the research is not as robust as I wish it would be, so that we could get more treatment options, because this is a lifelong illness.
Following up on your question on treatment, for instance, can you touch a bit more on some of the treatment that you were advised at the age of 19? Because as you mentioned, I know that a lot of people who do experience endometriosis, they do find out it's usually because they're trying to fall pregnant. And some of the archaic treatment, I mean, like you just mentioned about the studies, most of these studies have been conducted 50 years ago. So can you maybe touch on some of the treatments that you've been?
So, I mean, when I was 19, a gynae suggested that we do IVF and we inseminate me so that I would have a pregnancy. And this was supposed to help with my endometriosis. Now, the reason why pregnancy might help with your endometriosis is because for that 9 months you are not menstruating, therefore the menstruation symptoms and pain when you menstruate would be lower, right? But you can have that same effect if you take a contraceptive continuously to stop your period, right? There are many ways to do this that does not involve a pregnancy. The problem that I have with that idea of treatment is that what happens with that child? You can't just have a child as a treatment option. A child needs to be a choice. A child needs to be there for the purpose of, I want this child and committed to this child and committed to raising this child. We have way too many children in South Africa who are not being loved, who are not being cared for, who just happen because of circumstance. And because of circumstances like not being able to access abortion or having stigmatized beliefs around abortion, for example. There are people who are experiencing marital rape in this country who have children that they really didn't actually want. So now we're going to participate in that by having children so that, oh, I have leave for 9 months. What happens then to that child? Who raises that child? Who provides that child with the love and care that is needed at a fundamental age so that they become well-rounded people who contribute to society meaningfully? That all comes from your formative years. That comes from how you were raised and loved and cared for. So that was one of the treatment options, and I told them they were completely and utterly insane, that I was not going to do that. It was just such a, like, beyond what I could even imagine as a possibility. The other thing was inducing menopause, which they've done. Now we know that menopause comes with its own set of issues, it comes with its own set of side effects and so forth. You are also not supposed to be going through menopause for 20 years of your life because of medication. That's not what, how the body works. So a lot of these treatment options don't make sense anymore. They've been debunked. There are people who have had 3 children and still have debilitating pain every day because of endometriosis. So clearly it didn't stop the endometriosis. Nothing really stops the endometriosis. Like I said, it is a lifelong thing. So, these ideas of a hysterectomy, for example, it also has its side effects. You don't have any hysterectomy without being on medication for the rest of your life. So removing an organ is not a good idea when this illness affects the rest of your body. You can still have endometriosis without a uterus. So those are just some of the treatment options, and like I said, it hasn't really changed. I hear the same things over and over again from people who are seeking treatment options, and these are the gold standards, and then medication factors and every day. There's nothing really that you can say is a definitive option. The best thing that you can do is surgery. Obviously, surgery has complications. It creates scar tissue creates pain. So, yeah, the treatment options are not good.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the talk. That was really interesting. I also just want to make sure that I understand why is it that doctors are having this perspective that like 1 in 10 women have endometriosis, but it's actually much more, and especially with like the African population. Is it just because it's underscreened and so they think that there's less people and problems, or?
It's a mixture of things. Shall I come in?
No.
Oh, okay. The first thing is racism. And the other parts of it is our own stigmatization and cultures. Oftentimes, our communities don't exactly go to doctors things relating to the reproductive system, especially when we are young. You'll find that, statistics show that white people are more likely to take their children to gynaes when they are teenagers, whereas we are unlikely to do that. We don't think of the gynae for a teenager as a suitable thing to have, things invasive and whatever else. So there's that mixture of culture and stigmatization that happens, but you're also then meeting racism, right? Because no one is assuming that when you walk in the door, and I walk in the door, that we have endometriosis, right? So because they're not thinking that we have this illness, they're not screening for it, they're not looking for it, they're not trying to rule it out as an option really, because they're not thinking that that's what's happening, right? We are also more likely to endure pain as Black women than other people are, and so we endure until it is debilitating, and then when we seek help, it has progressed beyond the point of stage 1, and now you are infiltrating territory, you are dealing with multiple organs being affected, and these organs being severely under stress and so forth. So, there was a study done that showed that women in Nigeria have a rare type of endometriosis that's not found in European countries. So they were trying to figure out why, and essentially why is because people in Europe are screened and they are diagnosed much earlier. They're diagnosed at stage 1, so they put on medications to stop the estrogen, etc., to keep that window at stage 1. But when you're not doing anything for it and you are just enduring like we are told to do, right? We are rocks. You know that. So when you are told that you are a rock, you act like a rock. So how then you get diagnosed with those conditions when it is very severe and you have endured for so long? And so, to answer your question, it's a mix of different sort of biases, different sort of prejudice, even our own internal prejudice and stigmatization of ourselves and our bodies that then causes this statistic that 50% of Black women are less likely to get diagnosed, and also when that diagnosis happens is delayed. It's because of like I said, medical racism, medical gaslighting, a whole array of systemic issues that we have to fight from the inside out. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it really does answer it a lot. I also, just specifically with the racism, just don't understand why is endometriosis. Is it considered then like almost like a prestigious disease that is reserved for European descent, or is it just mainly that the people from the European descent have had more screening and picked up more, or what?
It's an interesting question. So I think that there is a level of nose in the air when it comes to endometriosis. This is also because it is, okay. I sound like the daddy Blackish where, anything that happens is like racism. Literally. So to answer your question, what happens is that Black women are often stigmatized. When I say Black women, I'm including colored women in this conversation as a broader subset of what Black means in this country. But what happens is that Black women are often seen as victims of disease. There's an assumption that we are promiscuous. There's an assumption that we are sex workers. There's an assumption that when you present as a Black girl, you are often seen as older than you are, and that's also why you'll find that doctors will separate you from your peers, and because they view you as an adult. They adultify Black girl. And so, to answer your question, it's a mixture of that again, right? Where you are seen as someone who, when you do have something wrong with the reproductive system, it's a number of things. It's probably because you have these things that's untreated. The other thing is, remember, under apartheid, white women could get abortions. We were not allowed to get abortions. And unfortunately, no matter what you do, whether you put laws around abortion, people are going to get abortions. Come hell, why would there is proof that way back in the day, our ancestors used herbs to cause abortion. And so what happened is a lot of us had botched abortions. And instead of looking at the cause of that, they demonize and stigmatize us as if we have botched abortions, it's fine. But it's not because of that, it's because of stigmatization in hospital systems. So now obviously when you come there and you have that thing, instead of stigmatizing you and just treating you, they create this notion that this is what you people do, right? And so when you already have that perception in your head, it's this thing of always assuming the worst, always assuming that we can't possibly have something that was, given to us by God, right? That it is not something that we went in search for. This is the idea that Black women are afflicted by things that they went to go and search for, went to go and do to themselves, like botched abortions and STDs and so forth, which is statistically untrue. But because of those ugly perceptions, those ugly racist thoughts that people have when they don't check at the door, they never check the things that endometriosis in us. They always think it's powdery inflammatory disease or fibroids. But they don't ever really go to endometriosis as an option because of those stigmatizations, unfortunately. So I suppose that's where the stigmatization comes in, like you said, prestigious. It's seen as something clean, right? And so because of the clean illness that just occurs in your body by no fault of your own, it must be what white women have. And what we have must be because of our behaviors. So you see what I'm talking about when I say it's just that racism comes with medical research as well. Yeah, medical research is often aimed at white people. It really involves us, and so those cause issues.
Okay, I saw a question at the back from Swan.
Oh, that 1 in 10 statistic is over 30 years old.
Yes.
And it's an estimate. And there's a huge gap in terms of how we treat patients and the research on how to treat patients.
Yes.
So currently, in terms of genomic data on endometriosis, 99% of it is white people, white women. It's shocking. So there are attempts now to get more diverse samples, but people are looking for samples that already exist, which means that they don't even want to put in money to get in proper new samples. So that's one of the issues we're still facing. You know, it's still there.
Yeah. So I think you have a question?
Yeah, good afternoon, Ms. Dirks. I just want to say thank you so much for bringing this topic of endometriosis tonight. And a lot of what you already said, it was just so relatable. I am from Atlanta, so very similar community to Minerva Park. And part of my research is working with patients, not patients, but people who experience these with partner violence. And a lot of sexual assault type of topics come up, but really is ever openly spoken of about endometriosis. So there is that lack of knowledge when these topics come up. And since I started my postgraduate journey, I've also done the counseling in my community in Atlantis and working with all the people who may be struggling with dealing with intimate partner violence. I now think, what if some of them even dealt with endometriosis, but because it's not really spoken of, especially these clients that I'm working with are people who don't have access to private healthcare. So it's a lot of what you said, those conversations about, are you actually the victim or are you part of the problem? And a lot of that, like the whole thing about if you go for contraception and stuff like that, you immediately see this person as sex workers. Now, it's not someone who's just taking agency over their lives. And I think, like you said, 100% it's about racism, whether it's internalized maybe by the people who are in the public healthcare system, who's maybe making assumptions based on your race. I didn't 100% saw it with my own eyes. And I just think that what you would be such an amazing, such a great work, because I can now use the story to help or encourage, or even for myself, if I ever find myself in a situation where I can come up with this. So my question is I'm doing a workshop very soon about intimate partner violence. I would like to add a segment of endometriosis into this course. How would you suggest I go about including that topic into my workshop?
It's about intimate partner violence.
And yes, like youngsters who are maybe just like how you can see signs of it for endometriosis specifically, because although I have knowledge on intimate partner violence, I would like to also hear from you who have experienced it, like how do I be sensitive about it and actually inform them about what they can expect.
I think that's a good starting point. I think that it's really impressive that this is what you want to do. Because I think an important part of endometriosis that we don't talk about often is the fact that it can cause very, very painful sex. When people are bleeding, or it's either after or during, the pain is just very horrible. So when we are talking about intimate partner violence, there is also a possibility of a woman not wanting to have sex because of pain, and partly really, not willing to understand that. So I think what you must do is talk about the signs and symptoms of endometriosis. You can find it on Google, but just talking about that and what we can look at is important, and make it so that you talk about it like it's a normal thing, right? Endometriosis isn't the only thing that can cause painful sex. There are a lot of other issues that can be trauma-based, that we have sexual dysfunction. So I think it's really important to go from that space, because that's quite prominent in our communities. So we must have those conversations and normalize it to the point where people are okay with talking about it, and when they're okay with talking about it, they'll be okay with seeking help. And so aiming to arm people with knowledge is really, really important. once someone has that knowledge, they can come out from the margins, they can come into the center, they can advocate for themselves, and they can seek the best possible help for themselves. So I think really speak about the symptoms of endometriosis, and yeah, I think that you'll do really well. Thank you.
I see we have one question from our online audience. So Mr. Janse van Vuren says, I'm wondering if you think the role of nurses can be optimized to better support women with endometriosis in navigating their treatment journey, considering both clinical care and patient advocacy within the healthcare system in South Africa.
Absolutely, I think that's a really powerful question and really powerful starting point, because in our local community healthcare clinics, so within a township, you will find that there's a clinic, whether that is Mitchellstein Community Healthcare Clinic or Hanover Corporate, you'll find those, and they kind of deal with, well, not tertiary care, but like, they'll refer and so forth. But anyways, I digress. Lots of times the healthcare providers, they are nurses. And so that's the person often that you are speaking to and dealing with. And so I think that there should be a big move to teach nurses, I suppose, a different approach. I personally, my personal experience, find nurses to be quite crass and cold and callous, which is not words that I really want to associate with a nurse. I want the nurse to be, kind, compassionate, caring, but that's often not the person we're getting. We're getting someone grumpy, someone who is stuck in their ways, someone who doesn't seem to have evolved from time that they became a nurse to what they is now. That sounds horrible, but nurses are often the first starting off point where people get stigmatized. And it's in those beginning stages where people are seeking things like contraception, when people are seeking HIV tests, very primary healthcare stuff. And nurses are often the barrier there. And so I think that it would be really important to teach nurses a lot more about destigmatization, about addressing prejudices. And I suppose also really there's ongoing training about how to relate to people. Found nurses are often quite queerphobic. They are transphobic, they are all sorts of, and that can also relate patient care and so forth. And so I think that if we found ways to mobilize nurses in a different way, to encourage them to kind of, further the way they think, I think that we would get somewhere. I'm trying to choose my words wisely, and it's still coming up a bit tough, but I think that's because of my personal experience with nurses that's been horrific. Oftentimes, they are the ones inflicting pain onto people, inflicting trauma onto people, going and telling your granny down the street, oh, did you know she came for this and that and the other, and then you don't go back, you don't seek help, you don't seek care, you don't go for that HIV test. Because God forbid you do, your family is going to know about it, right? And so absolutely, I think there should be a big push for mobilizing nurses, probably a different course of action in the approach, in the work that they do, and how they then relate to patients and the care that patients need. So I think that that's really powerful and really important, because like I said, our community clinics are full with nurses, and oftentimes there's one doctor, you cannot possibly see anyone. I remember going to the clinic and telling him that I can't know back pain, and the nurse examined me, and when I kind of walked down from the table because I'm short, she was like, see, there's nothing wrong with your back if you can do that. You know what I'm saying? So there's this, I often wonder if they just don't have enough information, and therefore they don't always know how to best approach the situation. But yeah, I can't speak for the training of nurses, whether it's once or whether it's continuous, I don't know. But I do think that something different needs to happen because even if it is online planning, clearly it is not to the standard that I think it should be.
Thanks so much, Nadine. I wonder if you could just share your email address for anyone who wants to maybe contact you with further questions, because it seems to have sparked quite a lot of conversation.
Yes, my email address is Dirks, dirks@gmail.com.
Okay, so if anyone would like to further the conversation, I think they're welcome to contact you. But from our side, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your experience, a profoundly personal experience, which I can't imagine was easy. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And I think the audience as well, you can see by the reception, is quite appreciative of that.
Okay, that's lovely.
Thanks. Okay, and thank you everyone online for joining. Okay, bye everyone.
Okay. Okay. I don't hear that. Oh, I don't know where the thing is.